we will begin our utility committee meeting, and we are very glad that we have one of our utility committee members, Mr. Tillman, on virtually, and he will need to raise his hand when he wants, if he has something he wants to share and speak, and then it'll take us a few seconds to flip him to the screen, because otherwise we'll be using the screen for our PowerPoint purposes for the rest of the committee. So, kicking off will be Mr. Beckham, and we thank you for being here today, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just mentioned Mayor Mutz that I'm here filling in for Joel today, so I'm not here to ask you for another $145 million.
Well, thank you, sir.
Good clarification.
So I wanted to mention a couple things real quick first. Next week is Public Power Week, which is a big deal to us being a public power utility. That's a national celebration held annually recognizing the economic, social, and environmental contributions of hometown electric utilities, which there are, ours is one of more than 2,000 across the nation, collectively serving 49 million Americans. This week honors the democratic tradition of community decision-making and participation that led to the founding of Lakeland Electric in 1904. So you can look at our LE website and our Facebook page for information about that. That's an APPA event, and you can look at our website for all sorts of social media content, contests, and public engagement events. We are very proud that we are able to serve the people, the public, with our utility 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So we'll be celebrating that next week. One of the things that we're also very proud of, as I just mentioned, last time you all gave very careful and considerate attention to our request for our RICE engines, which we have talked about as a bridge to the future. RICE plus solar is a great combination. So we wanted to thank you again for that careful consideration, for unanimous approval. That, as you know, Mayor Mutz signed that contract with MAN, and then since then we've had a kickoff meeting with them. We've made the first payment. That project is underway. We've had a meeting with Ned Batik in our environmental group, had a meeting with Trinity Consultants and a representative of the DEP, and they are pretty confident that we'll be able to get permitting for that by February, which is when we're thinking about groundbreaking. So it looks on schedule so far, so that's good, and we appreciate that again. That is a great addition to our fleet along with the solar. And we have Catherine Lacey has worked really hard over quite some period of time to get together a commercial that kind of indicates that. And we're ready for that commercial to play. Mr. Andrew, if you're hearing me.
He is, however, he'd like to edit something.
Hey, the commercial is on the
PowerPoint.
Yeah, well, I heard that.
In other words, you need to click the link. You need to click the link for the PowerPoint. For the commercial.
I think he's coming to help. He's coming to assist.
Yeah, he's.
You need two of you, Andrew.
Sorry about that. Oh, well, I had it on the desktop, but somebody else is logged in, right? I've got it on a USB drive.
Are you not logged in locally?
I added it to the desktop locally, but
It's not the bottom one, right?
I would say we'd go ahead and go into Scott's presentation, but if I do that, it's probably going to.
Sure, great.
It's probably going to. If I do that, though, it's probably going to mess this up because he's probably about ready to do. I would tell you a joke. I don't know canned jokes. I tend to be more improvisational. So if you want to throw something out there, I can joke about it. But
That's awesome.
That's okay. He's coming.
Alex is going to
And
go.
here we are.
There you go. Here's the commercial now.
So a solar panel walks up to a racing.
At Lakeland Electric, the future of energy is now. We're looking past coal to an efficient and more sustainable grid, a grid you can depend on in the good times and bad, designed with our community's future growth in mind, and built to provide our homes, schools, and businesses with an affordable, dependable, and sustainable energy source, while using advanced technology to efficiently meet your needs. At Lakeland Electric, we're building the future, and we've already begun. Learn more at lakelandelectric.com.
Very nice, Lucy. Very nice.
Yeah, very good work, Catherine. I know that took a lot of doing for a long period of time to get that just right. If only those stacks can come out of the ground like they did in the video for the rice plant, we'll be on schedule. So today we have a fairly, hopefully, fairly short schedule, which I'm sure you all will appreciate since you just went through a pretty long one. But we have Scott Bishop, our manager of emerging technology, is going to talk about what he's working on, give us an update, and then we have a couple of contract issues that we want to ask for approval for. So without further delay, Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Let me get that water back too.
This really could have been much more fun if we'd been filming this area, right?
Good morning, Mayor, City Commissioners, Utility Committee members. If you see one of them raise their hand back there, one of y'all trigger me because I can't. That way I can't have to look both directions. So, good morning, happy Friday, and happy October. Wow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
this is going to give you an update of where we are in the space, what we've been doing. It's not quite a year that we put this together, so we're getting close to kind of year one. Kind of want to give you a recap of what's going on in the space, what we've been doing. So we got to remember, let's get our headspace in affordable, dependable, sustainable through business continuity, electrification, and reliability. That's the sense for what this is all going to be about. All right, here's our agenda for the day. International Panel on Climate Change in August put out a 3,000-page document. That's kind of the one that you're seeing, maybe the social media code red and some of that stuff going off. I'm going to go over that, some of the actual information in there, kind of give you some information on what's going on there. That's 100 scientists founded by the UN, working with the World Meteorological Association, and they've been doing the research on the climate since 1988. Every 6 to 7 years, they put out another kind of big output. There's work groups, subcommittees, sub-documents, other reports. But in August of this year, the next big one came out, and that's kind of where you're seeing some of the momentum kind of pick up out there. We'll talk about it. I want to do an update on the internal workings and what we've been doing inside LE. I also want to talk about the current infrastructure bills, and there's a couple of them. There's the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, and there's the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill. All the stuff that's going on there has direct impact on us, and we're keeping a close eye on it. I want to talk about the Electrification Committee. Based on our success of the Reliability Committee that we started, focused on reliability, we've also built one focused on electrification. That group's doing some great things, been through a lot already, and I want to kind of show where that's heading. And lastly, there's a book. Yeah, there's homework after this one.
All right.
So it won't be a test, but there'll be an ask. So that we'll clear with later. Okay, so here's the first kind of breakdown of the Ipcc report from August 21st. The graph on the left has from 1950 to 2015 the general increase in global C, degrees Celsius. The projected colors out, coal, fossil, middle, Paris, and 0, are various scientific scenarios based on various outcomes. So depending on, right, so predicting the future has to have some kind of criteria around it in order for you to actually establish what the future will look like. So they do the science in the sense that here's what would happen if this, here's what would happen if that, and then they run through all those various scenarios. The grid on the right actually has the gigaton amount of carbon, either additions or decrease, that would occur as a result of the various scenarios. Let's talk about the scenarios. In the coal scenario, it projects that we have to increase our entire global demand for energy by 3 times, and that every bit of that new energy that we would produce would be through coal. Well, we're not going to do that, but that's the scenario. The second one is a 2 times increase in demand across the globe, and we continue to use fossil fuels at a heavy rate. Now, the middle one's kind of interesting because it says that various countries, various states adopt, zero carbon initiatives, but not everybody does. And so you kind of get a middle of the road, if we can't get the globe all to agree, then we get a middle of the road kind of result. So Paris is cut global carbon emissions by 50% by 2050, and then again cut it by 2100. That's the one we currently got back in. Currently, if that were to be the only stance in place, Lakeland Electric would meet all the Paris Climate Agreement targets already by default. So the zero, of course, is no carbon can be added, period. Everything going in must be zero. And that's your difference. But that's not the whole story. So the whole story is, ag and farming and industrial processes and transportation, all those things have to go too. We can be the catalyst for the change and help facilitate those things, but it's not just us. Fun fact, I did go to demand rate at the house. I don't have solar, but I went anyway so that I can start walking the walk of the talk. Found that I could save about 20 bucks a month with some changes, and if I don't pay any attention, it would cost me about 20 bucks additionally, just for me. So I wanted to know. I also did go completely electric with my yard tools. So I wanted to check that out too, right? Instead of gas, I still do my own yard work. So machismo thing, I guess. So the trimmer, the edger, the mower, all that stuff, I've had it all about 6 months. It's fantastic. I no longer wear earplugs. And now all the energy used for my yard work is powered by Lakeland Electric. So that's kind of a side benefit, right? So far, none of that stuff is happening. It's just the little things that we can start doing that maybe kind of head us in that right direction. So what's LE actually been doing? So the solar field RFP, I'm hoping to draft copy next week, and then we'll work on some negotiations then. It's approximately 17 megawatts. Well, we got to iron out a lot of details still before we bring it before you. Now, we got to remember that all 5 of our existing fields, the 3 at the airport and 2 at Bella Vista, total 14.5 megawatts. This one's 17. So we're more than double our entire fleet in one RFP.
Would you mind repeating that?
All 5 of our current existing solar fields total 14.5 megawatts. Okay. This one's 17. So it'll double our entire fleet plus.
Thank you.
Next, strategic partnerships. Commissioner Madden got Florida Poly, LEDC, Electric, the City Management Office all together and talk about hydrogen feasibility and capabilities for the future. That conversation helped develop some of the decision making around future-proofing our RICE engine so that they come by default 20% hydrogen capable, right? So it's part of the conversation is things that we're doing. Other strategic initiatives are working with Poly separately. They brought in some professors to talk about carbon capture. They actually had a pilot that would work based on math and materials that they had. Wouldn't work in a production environment just because it required shutdown, start up all day long, and that's not how we operate. But they did have capabilities. It just wasn't ready for prime time. We're also working with Parks and Rec in some ideation phases. I've been down to the greenhouse talking to Stacy Smith and Brian Dick. As we increase our tree canopy and we go through beautification projects and we do plant trees, why not consider as we expand our canopy getting some carbon offset for that tree we're putting in. So as we get more questions around the carbon landscape of the future, maybe by default, we're doing things already that we need to start getting credit for. How much carbon does a tree capture? I don't know. Size, type, how many leaves it has, all those things have to be figured out. Talking to some of our other local universities, Terry Dennis, and kind of going, hey, can I get some resources from maybe some environmental students? And we start talking about trying to figure out some calculations and resource and, leverage public-private partnerships to try to really benefit the community. Things we're working on, still in ideation phases. We've just begun it. Coming to you the 18th will be the evolution of some of our energy tool set. Ipcc, the group that does our energy tool set, is now going to include a battery EV calculator. What kind of mileage you're going to get, what's the benefit to you, and demand rate. Let's call it strategy and tool set too. So, as a demand customer, as a consumption customer, you can put a set alerts on our website that says after how many ever kilowatt hours, please send me an alert because I know I'm using too much energy. We didn't have that for our demand customers, so we're going to add that too. So folks that are on demand can get triggered. We got to figure out, technically how all that's going to work, but we want to get a strategy around it, start looking for the future. Brings me to Bonnet Springs Park. Went and met with Bill Tinsley last week. That thing is, it's going to be impressive, right? I did a tour of what they currently have. It's Disney-esque in its design and quality, and it's going to be something special. So as part of the negotiation with the RFP for the solar field, I negotiated 3 car chargers and a solar tree. So we're going to put a level 2 battery charger in each of the main parking. I think it's History Center first, then Children's Museum, and then Greenhouse. One main one at each of the parking decks. And then I got a solar tree coming. So the solar tree is probably going to be near the children's playground or something like that. That allows, it's about 3 kW. It's not like real energy usage. It's more probably used, we could use it for battery, for cell phones and chargers and things. Well, mom's at the park with the kids, she can charge her phone. We're looking at maybe putting a battery with it so that, on cloudy days, it's still capable too. But that's to come. It'll be a nice showpiece. In partnership with Florida Renewables partners, we'll have something out there that kind of gets the kids kind of engaged in the whole energy landscape. So internal resources, right? We're still in a best value situation. We work with community development on hiring an emerging tech intern, Aubrey Sams. She's been instrumental in helping Hannah Ball run our residential solar program. We're still getting about 20 customers a month adding solar and battery to their homes. They're also looking at evolving that system so that right now there's a lot of administrative burden. We need to kind of get it to a web-based web portal that allows customers to do a lot of self-serve. There'll still be customer interaction because we have to do that, but trade exchange documents and everything, but allow more self-service so that as this thing grows in the future, we don't have to continue to hire more residential solar program people, right? We can allow self-serve to kind of handle some of those things. And lastly, faster. And yes, that's spelled incorrectly on purpose. It's a joint venture between New Energy out of Tallahassee and us in Gainesville and Tallahassee and Jacksonville, working as a, let's call it a pseudo consortium, if you will, that as these federal dollars come down, we can show a collected effort in trying to ascribe for those dollars, right? So we look bigger than, right, a small municipal if we come at them with 6 municipals and say, hey, we're all interested in these things. And then we kind of figure out whose allocation or how much, you're putting in as a second effect of let's go get the dollars first and then figure out who's going to spend them where and when, right? So it's the initial step on let's go get those dollars. So recently, we successfully won a floating solar grant, but it's more to look at how do we manufacture more effectively and more cheaply, and how do we start driving down the cost of that to get more capability out of floating solar. So there may be a pilot project we can get some access to. It'll be small kilowatt, low cost, we'll look at helping them do some research and driving costs down in the solar pilot area. So what's going on in DC? What isn't going on in DC, right? So there's two bills currently in the works, the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. There's also the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill. Let's take a look at both of them. So in the infrastructure, the $1 trillion one, there's $65 billion for the power grid, primarily transmission. There is some research and development for hydrogen, tech dollars in there as well. There's $65 billion worth of broadband in there. So there's money for communities to increase their rural broadband. That money's available for in a multitude of ways. There's also $47 billion for cyber and climate change initiatives, so like carbon capture, information security, those kind of things. Now, the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better one's a little trickier. There's a 4% every year requirement between its passing in 2032 that you have to add zero carbon resources to your portfolio. Doesn't sound like a lot. Yeah, we're in Florida, so we can't really do wind yet unless we go offshore heavily. We can't really do, we're not building a nuke plant. So it's gotta be solar. It's $14 billion worth of potential dollars that you can get if you do meet the requirement, and there's a $6 billion, and this is across the country. $6 billion can be paid to the DOE if no one complies. So it's kind of a minus 40 if you don't make it, 150 if you do make it per kilowatt hour in dollars, and they're kind of trying to incentivize it or penalize increase in renewable resources, and so it's a little arduous. Let's take a look at the actual numbers on that one before we do anything else. Looking through the whole chart isn't the idea. If we go to the bottom line and we say 10 years from now, we meet 4% a year every year for the next 10 years using a 25% solar capacity factor, which is roughly what you get. You know, the amount of sun that actually is effective during the day. We have to install 721 megawatts of solar by 2032. Just for a little perspective around that, that's 5,000 acres. So that one has some teeth to it. Today they're actually voting on the $1 trillion package, I hear, and I don't know where the 3.5 is. I think it's held up. So let's go to some great news. That's enough of that. On the trail of success of Reliability Committee, T&D committee designed for the sole purpose of increasing reliability, we created the Electrification Committee. The committee's members from all departments and all divisions, T&D, customer service, power plant, production, finance, marketing. The idea is to dedicate them to electrification, EVs, battery, customer demand side management, emerging technology, right? I'm a one-man show. So in order for me to get resources, I built this committee that allows me to kind of break down some silos across all these organizations and get folks that are excited about doing some of these things. So the group you see above you, from the emerging tech department, myself, Hannah Ball, and Aubrey Sams, like I said, our new intern. At T&D, I have Ariana McGurk, she's a substation engineer, and David Miller, who's a transmission planning guy. He's grid modeling, that kind of stuff. Catherine Lacey, you know, she's our marketer. She's there to make sure our messaging is correct. I got customer service folks, Jessica Stanfill, who's our key accounts rep. So she's gonna be the face to the bigger customers. And then Amy Mitchell, who's in our revenue management department. From the power plant, a couple rock star engineers, and Mike Dammer and Scott Cox. And then from a finance department, Carol Cox, who you saw a presentation from a couple weeks ago on the customer segmentation and analytics piece. Gary Lingle, who is our peak demand guy. And then Kyle Davis, who's an accountant. He makes it so I don't have to do any math. So, go ahead.
Scott, what is T&D?
Transmission and distribution.
Thank you.
Transmission and distribution. Sorry. So, what have they been doing? So as well as industry presentations, WebExes, Zooms, group meetings, there's a lot of heavy hitting issues. We pursued an electric vehicle ride and learn event through a third party. A couple days of test drives with education, marketing, follow up to customers, all in one kind of EV package. Siemens has a DERM system, Distributed Energy Resource Management System, that allows you to control and operate your renewable resources spread throughout your system. We aren't the owners or installers of additional DER presently, so that's not real viable for us. It could be a future possibility. We joined the PLMA, the Peak Load Management Association, industry-driven group dedicated to finding value-added demand-side management opportunities. They have training, work groups, seminars, white papers, best practices. They've been instrumental in helping us guide us along the way. Eaton has a breaker, that box in the middle, that black one. So the IoT space will continue to grow, like smart thermostats, water heaters, lighting controls. They're pretty ubiquitous. You know, they're starting to become more. Just by the way, there's 10,000 smart devices in our service territory right now. We actually had someone look, and there's 10,000 of them. So that space is going to continue to grow too. But that breaker actually just goes into your panel box at the house and takes your low-tech device and makes it smart. So you don't have to necessarily buy the high-tech device. You can use the low-tech device and then put the breaker in that actually has the smarts in it. So it allows you to do some more controlled in, you know, things that you have that have been there a long time.
What would an application for that be?
Your hot water heater, instead of buying a smart hot water heater or a high dollar heat pump, you throw that thing on there and set a timer on it and decide only when the hot water heater would be used using the application. I got a smart water heater at the house, but I went and bought the smart piece to it and installed it, but the breaker would do just the same kind of thing. So AES Indiana, which used to be Indianapolis Power and Light, Scott Cox, who was one of our plant engineers, used to work there, and he knew they put in a 20 megawatt grid battery that helps them manage instability in the grid based on variable resources and all those kind of things. We got hooked up with them. They were great. We Zoom called together, answered all of our questions, showed us the entire product, walked us through the factory. You know, the idea of learning from other utilities in the space is a great way to go too. So yesterday we met with TEA, the Energy Authority. I mean, they do hedging and power purchase and stuff like that too, but they also have an analytics department. Their analytics folks came in and just wowed us with some opportunity for things we can do in the future. The most interesting one so far has been this Energy Hub. Energy Hub has agreements with the Googles and the Amazons and the Honeywells and all the tech companies out there. So they're a third-party provider that allow an aggregator that allow those relationships to be leveraged passively for our customers. So it would be an opt-in type thing. So like say you have a Amazon Nest at the house, Google Nest at the house, Google Nest at the house. So many. It would prompt you to say, hey, we're in a peak situation right now. Would you like to raise your air conditioner 5 degrees or 4 degrees for the next hour? And in doing so, we don't have the control of it. You opt in or out as a customer, and it allows you to make some decisions about your energy needs on the fly. So the application with everyone with their phones right here kind of does all that stuff. We looked at it heavily, actually did a proposal, got right down to the end of it. With the 10,000 devices currently on our system, we're looking at maybe a 10% adoption rate. And so the energy to cost is close. We need a few more devices out there, and maybe we need to push this a little harder to kind of get folks kind of adopted in. So we are looking at that. It has to get more ubiquitous in order for it to happen. So the Electrification Committee members, they've been great. The task at hand is intimidating. There's a lot, and they're willing to meet the challenge. And I'm just truly grateful for all those folks dedicated to the purposes of electrification in the future. And we meet regularly, and they all have full-time jobs anyway, but they still show up, and it's been great. It's been great. We're truly going to make some progress out of that. Lastly, there's a book. I know. Okay, so you sat through another Bishop blah, blah, blah session. And at the end, he's giving out homework, right? That's kind of rough. So this book has all been read by our Lakeland Electric leadership team. It's been read by our Electrification Committee. My inbox, the news, social media, all has climate noise in it. How do you know what's what, right? I mean, it's a perpetual barrage out there. So this book does a really good job of, from a layman's perspective, explaining the totality of the problem, right? Not giving solutions, it's not political. Bill, I guess since he came off of Microsoft CEO, has spent the last 10 years doing climate change. Of course, he's got some money involved, right? So, I mean, let's be honest. But he does a good job of laying the problem out, the totality of the whole problem. And he does a good job of not giving answers, saying that we got solutions coming, but they need to be worked on first. And so that's good too. Plus, it all gives us a common reference point when we come to these conversations and gets us all kind of at least with a baseline so that when we have these conversations later, that we all have some understanding of what the ask is. So between now and the end of the year, I ask that you read this thing. I'm going to send you a copy of it. All right, it's coming your way. Yeah.
Can you send it Kindle?
So our Libby app, our city library, actually has it free on our Libby app too. I don't know how many copies you can check out at a time. I don't know if they got 1 or 2 copies for you e-reader types. That's available as well.
I just bought the audiobook for $14, so it's not that bad.
Good. Thank you, sir.
You just did it right then?
Well, yeah. Sorry.
Doesn't like it.
I was paying attention, but yes, I did.
No, it's okay. That's okay. So, all right. So, okay, we got to remember about all this stuff, right? So you heard all the things that we got going on. That we got to work together on this stuff to get through it, right? It's going to take all of us and all of the solutions. And I'm never going to come here and tell you this is the only way to go. It's all of us and all the solutions working together from here going forward. So that's how we maintain affordable, dependable, sustainable. Thank you. That's all I got.
Great. Thank you, Scott. And we have questions for you.
Good.
So, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Bishop, thank you for your presentation. If you would share with me again, you did say bring it to us here, I guess, in the next commission meeting. Is that what you mentioned? Or
The Ipcc tool set will be at the next commission meeting. The EV calculator and the demand management strategy tool set evolution.
Okay, now what about?
The RFP?
Yes.
I'm gonna get a copy of it next week. It depends on the turnaround and how much effort we gotta put into it still. I can't make any promises on that one. It's soon. Maybe the next couple sessions.
Okay, now, and moving forward, as far as the new, I guess, solar farm is gonna be, is it north?
Next to the plant.
Yeah, okay.
In between
next to the plant,
Cumbie
yes.
and Lake Parker.
Right. That's got more than, of course, you said double what capacity we have now.
We're looking at 17 megawatts now, which is
Okay.
more than our total, all the rest of our fleet.
Okay, all right, and that's what we brought to us too as well.
Yep. That'll be maybe a couple sessions, depending on how fast I am.
Well, you're fast. So thank you, I appreciate that, thank you. Thank you again for the presentation.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, thank you for the presentation. And on your slide where you talk about the federal funding that's being debated and in some cases passed now, the infrastructure, the 47, I assume that's billion cyber and climate, are there funds potentially for cybersecurity? Is
Yes.
that, and can you talk about that a little bit? Cybersecurity for not only Lakeland Electric, but utilities. I feel like every time we turn around, there's a new story about an institution, a pipeline, a university that's the victim of a cyber incident. So
You speak the truth.
how do we, what does that landscape look like for us, and how are we staying out in front of that?
Well, that's I could speak to it, but that's our CIO, information security guys, and that's kind of their
Sure.
ballyhoo, right? So it's important. They need to be right? We all need to be looking for dollars for cybersecurity. It's never done, right? It's like this. There's no finish to it. It's continuing to evolve and growing and getting worse, you know, getting better. And it just depends on the threat landscape. And I'm IT nerd enough to talk about it, but it's, I wouldn't want to speak for any of those guys. Absolutely should be. They got a grant writer position in the city right now. That person, when they hit the ground, is going to be busy. And from the broadband to the, right, there's a ton of stuff out there. And we got to pay attention to all those things and make sure we're moving forward.
So we anticipate funding in this, you know, going back to that slide and those amounts from the federal side? Or is that, I'm just trying to.
Well, so we've tried, okay, so we've tried on several occasions to get dollars already. We wanted to do some fast charger DC charging and put it in some areas where we thought we could get a win. It's not automatic. So you and everybody else is also applying for those dollars.
Yeah.
So you got to be the best of class in order to pull those things off. Build your relationship with the organizations that are they're getting the funding to, and then to make sure you deliver on your dollars. So it's not, we're not getting dollars.
Right.
It's, we can go for some dollars.
But there are dollars on the table.
There's some
There
available.
will be, yes.
There's some available.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But that's just what's available, so sorry.
Right.
That's just what's available that we could apply for.
That's
This
correct.
list.
That's correct.
So in that regard, on that 4% tiering, is it written in such a way that as long as you are 4%, you can gain, and then when you stop, you can get off the train?
That's
And
correct.
you'd still be paid for those 3.
You could have, but then you start paying on the back end of it if you don't make it. So there's, it's an all or nothing
So it has a
failure.
clawback.
Yep, claws right back on you. So you can't just win a couple years and then walk away. It's, you start getting the penalty right
You
after
gotta
that.
maintain.
Yeah, so you got to think too, the entire country is all going to be vying for land, solar panels, resources to install it, all that kind of stuff. I mean, imagine the fight for trying to get those things rolling.
Well, and over that that period of time, that's a lot of people falling off of that chain, you know, that don't do that. So that gets scarier.
Yeah.
Switching subjects on my questions, Tesla certainly has the greatest inroads so far on the EV side. Do we have a supercharging station in our area along
Tesla, they do. The Wawa on the north side
on the north side.
has about 8 Tesla
Eight
chargers.
stalls? Okay. Are there, and are those near a retail center?
They're right there, no, they know, right there, parking lot right there. You said the retail center?
Where are they? Because I missed where you said.
They're right there by the pumping station, right near the store, right there near First Watch,
Good,
adjacent to First Watch.
good.
With restaurant on,
In the North Lakeland Sand.
North Lake and Sam, North Lake and Wawa.
They average about 9 stalls, and that's in today's world, and oh, good.
Yeah, you got-
Can you bring us in on a,
Yeah, they're right there by the pumping
This
station.
is plugshare.com. Those are all the chargers currently installed in our service territory. Green are level 1 or level 2, orange are level 3.
And we're about
would
20
tell us between 2 and 3, what does that mean?
1 and 2 are equivalent of a 240 volt, 60 amp service. Level
We
2.
have up front here.
Yeah, level 3 is DC fast charging, which takes a vehicle from empty to full in about 40 minutes, 20 to 40 minutes. So they're getting better. The idea is to make it so that it has the same experience as the gas station here in a few years, right? Where you walk in, you hold for 15 minutes, and then you're full again. But that infrastructure is yet to be installed. So
And so therefore, it would seem that this would be attractive to retail spaces that may have restaurants where, because, you know, you get in your vehicle in a Tesla and it'll tell you how long you're gonna be able to go, how far, and that your stop can be there, you can plan your lunch. And so I just wanna make sure that we're accessing I-4 adequately well.
we actually, one of our EV grants that we went after was for in between the Travelodge and the IHOP on 98.
There's by Dunkin' Donuts,
And
right up Dunkin' Donuts,
Did-
yeah.
we didn't get dollars. We were number 2. So
Yeah.
we're getting better.
Good.
I want that way all the time.
When we talk about, so if you go onto the Nest, Google Nest,
Yep.
and you have rebates and energy savings as one of their sites, put in your zip code, we're not listed in that. Is what you were talking about earlier what it would take for us to become one of their inclusions, or can we do something at a lesser level?
Yes, both. And the meeting before this last one, the Electrification Committee talked about rebates and incentives. and how we both modify what we currently have as a platform, and then we develop the future needs and start driving some of that adoption. How do we get them shared, right? So that people know they're there, and how do we maximize what dollars we're spending for what rebates we want customers to purchase? That was our previous meeting, and we got to come back to that one, but it's in the works.
Because I have 4 units, actually I have 5 units in my house, and 5 Nest Stats, and those have cut my electric costs as dramatically as any single thing.
Yep.
But you have to let them go. You know, you have to let them find their seasonality.
Air conditioning and water heating, that's
50%
your
of our
bill.
costs.
That's your bill.
Right. So it's pretty dramatic. On the what was my last question? Okay, that's it for me. Somebody else? Yes, Commissioner McCarley.
On the infrastructure, 2032, you said for the 721 solar capacity needed to generate by 2032, that we would need 5,000 acres of space. Would that include, like, if there were panels on top of things? Like, how would you aggregate?
Oh.
How could you spread it apart? You don't need a 5,000 acre parcel.
Right.
Okay.
It would be in total.
Okay.
You wouldn't need one 5,000 acre piece. You could do it in, 200 acre pieces. You want to go at least 20 megawatts of utility scale at a time just to make your cost of infrastructure recoverable, right? So if you put in little 10 megawatt units, your cost structures aren't there yet.
That just gave me a hard time.
Oh, yeah, right. Who's got the 5,000?
If it's all one side.
Well, and the difficult,
Babcock Ranch, like, boom, covered in panels.
the difficulty on rooftop is the stability of the structure, our wind ripping capacity.
Well, I'm not asking about rooftop, I'm just saying, is it in pieces instead of one big piece of swath of land that we're running out of that costs a lot of money now because our dirt gets more expensive by the minute in the state of Florida. So I was just a little concerned about that.
Commissioner Walker.
Going back to EV locations for electric vehicles, I thought it was mentioned, I know I asked a question some time back, and I thought the answer I got was like 20 some odd locations here in our city. I was just counting those little spots there. That's not showing them all there.
Those are publicly accessible ones based
I thought we
on
had 23, was it?
5, 6, 7, 8.
Someone told me to a 20 some odd number.
Well,
There probably is, because they're stacked on top of each other.
That's about 23.
Yeah, I would say that's
And some of those will have multiple stalls.
Okay, I see it.
And then if you go out just a little bit, they may,
Oh,
they may
okay.
include some of that too.
All right, okay.
It may include Bartow and Winter Haven and some of that area.
Any other questions from other utility committee members? Dan, do you have a question for us at all?
Dan on TV.
Okay.
Well, I think the question that I had has been answered. I was just wondering, with this requirement for so much solar, if it would include rooftops installed as part of, if they aggregate as part of a distributed system. But I think Scott answered that it probably may actually include that.
Correct.
If I understood it correctly.
Correct. It can be included.
That's correct.
Yes.
Good.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Music.
Yeah, and thanks for the presentation. My question is this: when I look at the like Commissioner McCarley, when I'm looking at the sheer volume of dirt that we're going to need for this, and let's just say that somehow we got a 5,000 acre parcel somewhere, right? And because I don't understand the transmission, the technology, and all that, at what point does it not make sense to be far enough away from a reduction of power in transmission? How does that, and if it's too big of a deal, you and I can meet elsewhere and talk about that. I'm just, land as we've been talking about, I mean, we're talking about allowing buildings to be smaller so we can get more of them, and here we're looking and saying, we've got to eat up a bunch of land.
You don't have to eat up a bunch of land. That was what he clarified.
Well, ultimately, you still need 5,000
We
acres.
still need 5,000 acres.
Yeah.
I mean, where it comes from is,
5,000 acres.
but I
It'll
mean,
be small pieces, but it's still required. Now, let's do some perspective here. 700 megawatts of hydrogen-capable generation, about 100 acres. So just so for some perspective there.
Well, that's where, exactly. So how do we balance that, you know? I mean, that's always the,
Right, so.
because this is, as it's classified, right? It's emerging. This is coming on, so we're learning and growing and changing, and the technology is, you know, so much different.
And it's getting more cost effective, and we're getting more and more customers to use it, but the costs, you know, are getting outrun by the logistics right now and supply chains, and the prices are going up a little bit right now. So it's kind of, right, so we're trying to fight that whole logistics that's bothering us, as well as the land usage. They're saying they're getting it better and better, and now we're down to maybe 6 acres per megawatt. It's still quite a bit. So it's getting better, but you're right, how do we balance the enormity of requirements against the actual infrastructure outlay? And it's
Right, and especially when you consider the RICE engines and the compact space that we're able to put 120. Yeah.
And the quickness of response and the reliability through
Yeah.
cloud.
Yeah.
Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I won't be too verbose, hopefully, but I do have several things that I want to comment on. So, just to your point, that is the whole goal when you go to mandates, right? So you mandate a vaccine, then you forget about early treatment and all the other things that go into solving and mitigating a health crisis. Same as when you just mandate that it's just adding solar instead of being open to research and development of these other technologies, green hydrogen, battery storage, things like that are going on right now and making progress. But if all of a sudden it's just only add net zero and you only can add what is net zero right now, you're going to be spending a lot of money on stuff that's not the best solution long term. So we want our emerging tech folks across the globe to be strategizing and getting us to the best technologies. So when we are advocating at the national level, we don't want to say, well, we don't believe in climate crisis. We don't want to do anything. We love coal. No, we are just saying we want to have the very best technology at the right moment, and we don't want to preclude the best technology by just adding acres and acres and acres of solar right now. That might not be the best mix for us here locally. It might be to get just enough solar to match with an electrolyzer, get the government to pay for it with grants, and then produce hydrogen that not only goes back into our grid to give us a 24/7 solution, but also helps the transportation by giving mid and heavy load, trucks something to fuel their fuel cells with. So the goal is when you hear these things coming down the pipeline to be educated. That's why he wants us to read this book so that we can say we have a community-owned electric utility that has serviced us well for 100+ years, keeps our taxes low. We want to keep it that way going into the future, and we don't want to go and spend a lot of money on stuff that's not going to take, 25, if you notice the column here on the solar capacity factor, you're factoring in 25% capacity.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
who would invest billions of dollars on something that only gives you 25% of your capacity? And then you're wasting beautiful land for a 25% solution. So we don't want to do this, and that's why we're kind of educating you on this. And the federal government's trying to solve a problem, but like we often see, unless they get feedback from people who know what they're talking about, they will give us a mandate that won't make sense and will cost $1 billion, and then we'll have stranded assets when we get better technology. So for us, we need to listen and pay attention to this and see if you hear about legislation and talk to Scott Franklin, our new congressman, or others in DC to say, we want to be technology neutral. We are making great strides. The whole globe's trying to solve this problem now. It's not just like in Florida. So we got a lot of scientists and researchers and technology companies, Elon Musk getting us back and forth, from space. We can solve this problem, but we don't want to be forced to say we have to 4% add solar over the next 10 years and spend all of our money doing that, because really the penalty for not doing it might be better than adding it for the next 10 years, depending on the science.
Just so we're clear, it doesn't say add solar. It
Well,
says
for
add
Florida.
current carbon neutral or carbon zero energy. Well, what else do we have?
Yeah.
Right? So we could buy some wind asset that no one's got built yet, or something else. But just so all we got's the one-trick pony solar. So we're forced to do that, right?
And Scott had made a good point too, but supply chain, we all know the issues. Well, if all of a sudden the whole country has to add 4%, the supply chain is going to be really, crazy on that. So I wanted to kind of comment on the national piece, because I know Cindy Clemens is looking on that for us, just like she does for pole attachment. She's not here today, so we co-conspired to make sure that that is, y'all are hearing that. We want to get points for reducing carbon more than just adding 4% a year of solar, the only technology that we have right now. You know what I mean? Like, we're still getting to the same goal, knowing we have 6 RICE engines that if we could get some green hydrogen and put that in there, that we are still making progress, but we're just not being boxed into how we make that progress and being penalized if we don't. So that's kind of that discussion there. The other thing is, when you met with the AES, was it AES, about the battery? So where are we on batteries? Is that anything we would even want to invest with our 17 megawatts, or are they not there yet?
So the current technologies, lithium ion, they're having problems in California with, hundreds of megawatts at a time, catching on fire, burning, explosions, problems like that. So the technology is capable, but it's not all the way hashed out, reliable, resilient, right, long-term asset buying. There's some newer technologies coming, iron air batteries. There's some better stuff on the way.
All the state.
Right, better stuff on the way. Lithium ion's capable, right? And it has a use case, and it's a little costly, but it's not awful yet. But it's not tried, true, tested, ready for prime time. And I'm not ready to jump on it until it is.
Okay, and then the other question is, when you mentioned the floating solar pilot, how could you tell me the size with that compared to the OUC array?
Ours will be about 25 kilowatts.
Is that about the same size as the
Yeah,
other?
it's not a ton of energy, just enough to do some testing on it. We could, you could power a couple homes maybe, but 25% capacity at 25 kilowatts is only when you have it too, right?
Is OUC's floating array what they're using to match with their electrolyzer?
Yes, in that case it is.
And so they have enough? That's enough floating solar to
Their
power
pilot,
their
their pilot
electrolyzer?
that creates a little trunk's worth of hydrogen, yes.
All right, and just so y'all know, they get, Department of Energy is passing out money. If you can get a good enough pilot and stand out, you can get, they got the floating solar first, and so they proved the concept. It actually is, better for the solar panels. They stay cool on the water. They tested the pilot. Now they're getting a Department of Energy electrolyzer to connect with it, so they can have a 24/7 loop with that solar to prove another concept, because they're looking for proof of concept to then be able to see scalability and then price it that way, because they need to know how much green hydrogen is going to cost to get it, rolling somewhere. So then you mentioned Tallahassee, Gainesville, and who were the other people with the FASTER consortium?
Jacksonville,
Okay. Just those 3? Are the 3?
yeah. As far as municipals, Gainesville, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, and us.
Okay.
OUC is also in there. OUC's in there.
Are they? Okay. Because I was wondering, you didn't say them. I thought, well, are
No,
they
they're
just
in.
playing nice in
No,
the
no, they're
sandbox,
in.
or they want to go by themselves?
I'm just old and can't remember, so.
It's worse.
And so then my last comment was just, excited about a video, and, I hate to be like, let's get on to the next one, but I'm excited even for the next one where we can talk about, and kind of, just like we just talked about, being technology neutral, where our technology is, how these RICE engines are injectable with green hydrogen potential, but then you got to be able to make green hydrogen. Solar takes this many acres, we're going to add it, but we want to add it incrementally as it makes sense with our total portfolio and where we're going, and that we want to decrease carbon more than we want to necessarily add net zero carbon products that are not what we want to use long term and spend $1 billion on.
Amen.
She's pretty well schooled, isn't she?
Yes, sir.
Do you have wetlands we can use beyond this that are practical, or is it just tough to service them
So I did
for solar?
I did look at 7 wetlands as far per the pilot. We don't have infrastructure down there. There is also a water quality aspect to these things that actually help. It cools the water, maybe good fish habitat. So we're going to look for some synergies. You got to have non-navigable water too. We got a lot of navigable water that's problematic. And then we don't need a ton of water space for 25 kilowatts. It's not big. But maybe looking around later for wetland, less than optimal area that we could use to, no one's really approached that yet. That we probably need to be looking at as we get more land requirements and we're getting less dirt.
Would Florida Poly be interested in putting it on those lakes out?
Possibly.
Well, and it's a good use, perhaps, for a developer to be able to convert some of that productively. potentially.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Excellent, Scott.
I've got one.
Keep up the good
I
work.
have one.
Oh, wait, Dan has one more. You don't get off
Yeah,
scot-free.
I think Commissioner Music brought up touched on an interesting part of this requirement for the 4% increase. In this bill that they have, or this process, is there any issue? Are they addressing the transmission issues? Because if we have to put in utility scale, there's going to be a transmission issue, and are they addressing that along with ways to fund that? Because that is going to be an issue.
So if you got your megawatts through some other person that they bought the 5,000 acre somewhere and put in megawatts, you'd have to pay the transmission carrying cost in addition to the energy, but it would be a way to meet the requirement. They don't give me additional incentives for the fact that that's happening, carbon free by wire, if you will. But that, right? So it's possible that you could do that and use that as we're going to consume that energy and that's going to be us paying for it. But you do have to pay the transmission carrying costs from whoever you're going across to get it here. And that is additional cost.
So if we were bringing in solar, for example, from somebody else's field and using their transmission, does that aid in adding up and aggregating our requirements?
It can. It's just going to be a lot more costly.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
One more question?
No,
He has one.
I'm gonna not, no.
I got one in me. Come on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so here, as I'm listening to someone that is very well learned about this topic, what I love about being on the city commission is that it's local. I like the local aspect. I like that the neighbors can come and tell me what they love or what they're bugged about, and we can work on addressing that. When I hear about this stuff, I'm hearing a lot about government incentives. I'm hearing about government money, and that always makes me nervous for two reasons. One, they don't generate revenue. It comes from us. And two, if we go down that path with their money, what happens when that money runs out? Have we put ourselves in a pickle? So that's, like I said, it's not really a road I want to go down. It's just what gnaws at me a little bit is that there's no free money, and once we do, take their money, not that there's going to be things that they're going to, but all of a sudden that money can be gone, and we've seen that in the depletion of credits that are available for solar on the resident side, at least that I'm aware of. So that's all I just want to say.
Well, and I think you raise an excellent point, because there's several factors in that. Even batteries make a huge difference in terms of what's going to happen and what flips in technology. We're wonderful about filtering at the finance level in this city, and one of the things we protect against using federal programs that have clawback problems that we don't make sure we comply with along the way. And so I think, and have had great discipline and success, and it's beneficial. We don't buy the pie in the sky without a very predictable path to be able to get there. And Commissioner Madden's comments about it not even being the most viable because we don't know what the future necessarily is going to hold. Yeah. Those are the kinds of treadmills you don't get on,
right, unless
you have a path to success that is very predictable, and Scott's wired that way as well.
Right, yeah, you didn't want to throw all your money at Betamax, right? Because, eventually.
Although I did. I just want you to know I was early in, and I knew Betamax would win, but it didn't. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's also a Sony distributor at the time.
We have a couple of contracts that need your
Yes.
review and recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Ariani.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
We have two utility items. The first is an agreement with Midstate Industrial Maintenance LLC. This is for modification and repair of 14 exhaust silencer panels that are in the combustion turbine of Unit 8. Over the years, it's degraded the insulation and has been trapped in the heat recovery steam generator tubes, and the result has been overall decreased efficiency of the unit, as well as the potential for extensive damage if these are not repaired and replaced. In accordance with that, the city's purchasing department issued an invitation to bids seeking contractors to provide for these repairs of the 14 silencer panels. We received 3 responses from vendors, and as you can see listed in your agenda packet, Mid-State Industrial Maintenance was selected as the most responsible bidder. However, they were also not the lowest, but what we have here is your local preference ordinance in play.
Hard at work.
Hard at work. Hard at work. So based on the local preference ordinance, Mid-State submitted a bid that was within 10% of the lower bidder, which was ProServe, and as such, they were awarded the contract. The work will include equipment, materials, removal and installation of silencer panels, and will also include the removal and installation and attachment of the perforated plates. Mid-State is scheduled to complete that work during Unit 8's spring 2022 scheduled outage, which is between March and May of 2022. The total cost of the work is $221,900, and that is included in Lakeland Electric's FY22 budget, and we'd ask for your favorable approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion approved in a second. Discussion by any committee members? Any discussion by the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Aye.
Unanimously passes. It was a delayed aye.
Delayed on that, yeah.
Okay, it's okay.
The second item that we have, this is also another agreement with Mid-State Industrial Maintenance LLC. This is for outage contractor services for both Unit 5 and the MGT2 unit at McIntosh. They'll be doing some maintenance work that will be coming for the upcoming fall outage. Specifically, Unit 5's general maintenance will include replacement of a section of the boiler roof, penetration, seal replacement of that same roof, replacement of the silencers, replacement of the combustion turbine, roof fire suppression damper, and also some related small scope inspections, repairs, and replacements. As for MGT2 unit, that general maintenance will include the repair of the interior exhaust duct lining that has been damaged. Based on the need for this maintenance, the purchasing department issued an invitation to bid seeking qualified contractors that would provide labor, supervision tools, materials, equipment, scaffolding, and any related items to perform the work. What we received is 3 responses, and Mid-State was determined to be the lowest, most responsible bidder. You will notice quite a difference from the Mid-State being the low bidder to the next highest bidder. In talking with staff in the selection process, there was another bidder that submitted a bid that was at 1.2 million, which would make that less of a differential, but that particular bidder was determined non-responsive because they didn't timely turn in their bid response to the correct place. They didn't turn it into the purchasing department, so they were deemed non-responsive. And as well, some of the other, in reviewing the responses that came in, the other bidders were not as familiar, I believe, with some of the elements of the scope of work, including what was determined was they were overpricing material and labor. And the other issue here is that Mid-State being a local Lakeland business, there were no per diem expenses in addition to that, because if you notice, the other contractors are out-of-state contractors. So that accounts for the discrepancy that you're seeing, the huge price difference there. The total amount of cost of the work is $898,200, and that is included in Lakeland Electric's FY22 budget. The completion of the work is scheduled for the fall outage, and that will start November of this year and continue through December, and we would ask for your favorable approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Commissioner McCarley and second by Commissioner McLeod. Discussion by any committee members, and I see Commissioner Music and then Commissioner Madden.
Quick question. So, I always enjoy when you come up and you say that this is included in the budget. So this is part of that. Is this just because they know they're foreseeing all of this stuff that needs to happen, or is it just that they have a chunk of money sitting aside for when these things come up?
Well, I think this is part of the normal, when we have our typical, these are scheduled outages,
Okay.
these aren't forced outages, so that money is budgeted for that, and they know that this type of maintenance will occur.
Gotcha. So maybe they may or may not have known this specific thing, but they knew outages and things are going to happen, so they're planning
Correct.
accordingly. Thank you.
No, just come on down, and because I think it's important for people to understand.
Steve Reinhardt, I'm the plant manager for energy production. And like Ms. Ramona said, we do plan our outages in advance. These outages, I mean, we've been planning them for over a year and a half. And we have, estimated, and we've gone out for bids, looking for, vendors to supply, different work for us. So we truly understand the costs associated with repairing the equipment that we have.
Right.
Unit 5, I mean, the roof of it has leaks on it and so forth, so we have to repair it. The HRSG, is in need of these repairs, and we've identified that during the last year's outage.
So, but to his point, just to make sure it's clear, Mr. Reinhardt, when you are doing the outages and you anticipate this, that's when you build it into a budget specifically for those kinds of repairs, correct?
Correct. So, as time goes on, you do inspections, you look at different things. You can estimate, well, this particular piece of equipment will last, so long.
Right.
And then, just like your house, I mean, you have an estimate when you're going to replace your hot water heater. Well, we know different sections of our HRSG, our boiler, are going to need to be replaced. We replaced our LP section last year. This year we need to replace our roof. There's other sections of the boiler, the superheater. In the next couple of years, we're going to be asking to replace that also.
And that's important on the budgeting side because of the fact that if we're setting rates, we want to make sure what our cap expenses are being taken place.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And we have a 10-year plan that we're working towards also, that where we have our outages scheduled. There's requirements for how based on starts or based on hours of operation that you have to do certain outages based on the OEM recommendations also. So it's well known what we're where we're going, what we're planning to do. Some of it does creep up on you. We do have some forced outages. I mean, that is a reality of operating a power plant. So we do have money set aside for those also, but the primary money that we have set aside is for the scheduled planned outages. And I mean, most of it's in the fall or in the spring. We're doing boroscopes. We're doing, like this fall, we're gonna do the hot gas path on MAC GT2. It's a very, very large outage to go after some cracks that we have to do. So there's a lot of work that we're doing, and we need support, contractor support, in order to accomplish a lot of the work that we have scheduled, because we have a small workforce relative to what you need during an outage.
Right. I think that it is great just from a budgetary standpoint. I just always love Ramona always seems to just say it's included, which I just love. I love the fact that we've got contractors in our area that are familiar with our current workforce, our current things. So that goes back to what we're always talking about hiring local the best we can. But that's a lot of moving parts over there, and that you guys have the experience and the wisdom to plan ahead. I admire that. So.
I think, and I want to just comment, because I think what you said, do we budget specifically for items, or do we just budget a pot of money? So it kind of really is a hybrid.
Sure.
Because you don't know for sure what you're going to find when you get in there. You kind of know, as Steve said, based on historical outages and based on life expectancies of certain pieces. We know we have a pretty good idea for an outage scope, but we always put money in for enough projects that, if everything goes great, we get to do everything we have to do, everything we want to do, and all of that. If not so much, then you move what you want to do to what you have to do, so that you move money around. So it's a combination. When we say something is budgeted in our FY22, for example, budget, sometimes it means that it's budgeted and we move it from one bucket to another, and other times it means that we anticipated it correctly and we hit that budget head on. So it's kind of a hybrid.
Yeah, your Unit 2 blow up, a couple years ago was an unanticipated.
Well, absolutely, yeah, that's an even more unanticipated type event than even Ware.
Right.
So just want to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good question. Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just thought it would be a great chance to bring up our local vendor preference for the utility committee folks. The commission worked on that for, I think, a few years, it seems like, and just was really officiated last November. So to think that Midstate, a local company who missed opportunities in the past, we've done work with them but there was one in particular that they missed their bid protest period because they didn't, feel like it, they were judged fairly based on their capacity and their ability when they're just right down the road. And you could go tour and see whether or not they were, capable or not. Whereas you can't have the same luxury with the Indiana folks and the Michigan folks. So I know I went to go tour their factory to see what they did, not that I would know, but just to hear, from our citizens that they have capacity or they're building capability even as they grow as a company, maybe on something they couldn't do 5 years ago, now they can. And just to keep that in mind, that when you are working with local companies, they hire people here, they eat here, they, play here. And so to think that it benefited them on the first bid by a little bit, but then here, even though there was one for 1.2 million that was not responsive, the next bid is $1.9 million. So, I really do think this is a perfect example of we're not trying to give away money to local vendors. We're thinking that, this will come out and balance itself out if we are prioritizing folks who work here, live here, play here, who are our customers, for Lakeland Electric. That could be something that's beneficial to our city. So, just to have these back to back, one where they won it because of the local vendor preference, and then the second they won and are, much less expensive by $1 million. So, I just thought that was great to have an example, less than a year later that really spells out what we had been advocating for a long time.
But I think to even add on top of that, I think it's going to do more than even out. I think it's going to be a win-win for us as citizens, us as business owners, and then us as a city who's trying to budget and manage accordingly. I think that when people are coming here and want to set up, and when I come and set up shop here, they take care of me, and I think that is a big deal. So thanks for bringing that up.
Commissioner McCarley.
I just wanted to tell Ramona thank you per usual on taking the time to explain that difference in that bid. And because we don't always, especially when we've been here a long time, we kind of race through things, even as commission and utility commission, racing through details. So I appreciate you heightening the detail between why that 1.2 got
I
booted
just know
out.
when I see it, I have that question.
Yeah.
So I immediately think that you will have the same question collectively.
It's a good anticipation, so thank you for doing that. And I'm really glad that it's worked out for a local company on that second bid, to echo what Commissioner Madden said. But I always appreciate, you're very thorough, and I appreciate that. You help me learn every time, so thank you.
Aw.
Gee, that's so nice.
Ditto.
All right, any other comments?
Call for a vote, please.
Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same.
Aye.
Unanimously passes. Any other matters before the commission, for the utility committee? None. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
And a second? And by anybody that's left, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Your battery went there.
Thank you for your time.
Lost your battery.